This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
And ham for us is on Christmas Day, but the actual ham meal that we really love is the Boxing Day meal. So it's a big procession to eat ham on the Boxing Day, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the highlight.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Although he'd carved out a career in some of Sydney's best restaurants, making connections with quality producers, it wasn't until he went on a trip to the United Kingdom that Mike McEnearney discovered a more holistic approach to food. Buoyed by the impact of his newfound view of food, he embarked on a journey to change his own conversation that put the focus on produce, shared meals, abundance, and most importantly, connections. Mike, how are you?
I'm very good, Anthony. How are you?
I'm good. You've done the unthinkable and travelled all the way over the other side of the earth.
I know. Do you know what? As soon as those tickets were available, my wife jumped on them, and you can hardly blame it. It's been a while since we've been back, so it's nice to be here. But it's a lovely day in Jersey today. I can see some blue sky for the very first time in about a week. So happy.
You're over in the UK in Jersey, as you mentioned. Well, tell us a bit about what it's like being there.
Well, it's fascinating because Joss, my wife's English, so we'd often come back once a year to the UK. Her dad is in Jersey, and what I've noticed since coming back this time is that there's been a real amazing regeneration of farming and production on the island. It's really lovely to see. There's a younger sort of fold moving back to the island a little earlier in their time. I guess Jersey is an interesting place because it doesn't have a university on the island. So a lot of people after school, they jump ship, go and travel and come back, or maybe not come back. But there's a lot of younger people moving back earlier, setting up sort of farming and like there's a really lovely goat's milk farm not far from where I am. The production is tiny. There's a lot of people that are really getting into fishing on the island, and it's just, you can feel it and you can see it, that there's a real love for local. There's people that are very proud of the Jersey herd and also the famous Jersey Roll potatoes over here, and they're owned by massive big companies, but there are smaller people now wanting to contribute to that production, which is really great to see.
You've had a stellar career, but it was a moment over in the United Kingdom. It sort of moved you forward towards the Kitchen by Mike model and all of the things that you've done since. Tell us about that revelation that you had with food.
Yeah, Joss's mum lives in Wales on this huge organic farm, and they're totally self-sufficient. They grow all their own livestock, their own produce, they make their own power. And it was back in 2009 when we had our third little boy, William, we decided to take a sabbatical and go back to the UK because at the time we didn't know whether we wanted to live in Australia or whether we wanted to live in the UK. So we based ourselves on this huge farm. We sent our boys to the local village school to learn Welsh, of all languages. I don't know if they remember much Welsh these days, but it was nice for them to be in this tiny little village school, and we just lived off the property. the huge kitchen garden there. They were growing. They had some. They were growing a couple of different types of livestock. They had saddleback pigs at that time. They had lots of different chickens. They had some. They had some longhorn beef cattle. They had some Welsh speckle-faced lambs, and it was just amazing understanding that side. And then, really, how's this one? I'd never built before in my entire life. I'm pretty crap at it, but I built this enormous brick oven. Took me over 3 months to build, and I used to fire it up every third day actually. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd fire up this oven, let it burn for 5 hours to get hot enough. Then I'd bake 30 kilos of hand-kneaded sourdough and sell it in the school car park at school drop-off in the morning. And the thing about it was, back in those days, 2009, the people of Wales were used to buying bread that was white, it was sliced, and it was in a plastic bag. They'd never really seen sourdough in this lost village of Wales. So the first time I went to sell the bread, I didn't sell any. People looked at it and thought, wow, what's that, a rock? Or then the next time I sold a couple more, and then we from then on, people used to come to the farmhouse and pick up their bread that they pre-ordered. So that was an amazing experience for me to make this brick oven from scratch using mathematical equations I'd learned at school, but was bored by them. Like, who'd have thought you'd use the ellipse formula in real life? But here I was building these frames to build bricks around for the arches. So it was really nice to pull out these equations. But there was another part of it. There was this huge kitchen garden that we lived off. But at the top of the kitchen garden was this roped off area that we weren't allowed to touch. And there were these 4 beds in this roped off area, and I saw all these amazing herbs. I could see coriander, I could see gooseberries, I could see oregano and a few other things in there. And I asked my mother-in-law, Sue, why don't we use those beds? They look amazing. And she goes, well, I rent those beds to the White Witch in the village. And I thought, oh, what do you mean? It's a Hippocratic garden. She's following the 4 humours of the body, so sanguine, melancholic, phlegmatic. So those herbs, they were medicinal herbs for her, but for me they were culinary herbs. And it was something that I was fascinated with from that moment on. So much so that when I opened Kitchen by Mike in 2012, a year after opening, we planted an urban physic garden in the car park, which we lived and bred, and really, really got excited by teaching people. We had all the plaques in there so you could walk in there, and we chose 5 beds. We only had space for 5 beds, so we had a gastroenterology bed, we had a dermatology bed, a ears, nose and throat, we had a cardiology bed, a neurology bed. So it was exciting to educate people about everyday food and what it can do for you when you're eating it. And I guess that was a big driver behind the second cookbook that I wrote, Real Food by Mike, where it was, if your child's got worms, then give it some more oregano. Basic things like this. It's about using everyday ingredients. As long as you know what it's doing for you, then you can use them to your advantage. So yeah, that was my time in Wales in 2009, and it was exciting for me.
There's many parts of your career that we could discuss, but Kitchen by Mike had such an impact, and the way that it operated. Tell us about the idea behind it and what it took from a food perspective to deliver the feast for so many people. Yeah,
well, for me, I cooked at some pretty amazing restaurants in my career, and I just thought, well, we got back. We never found utopia in the UK, by the way. We came back. We came back because at that chapter in our life, it was about the kids, and where else can you bring them to the beach after school every day but in Sydney? So we came back, and I made the decision when we came back not to work for the man again. It was my turn to do something for me. So I decided to throw in the towel of cooking for a little bit, and I baked at Iggy's for nearly a year in Bronte, in their first place on Belgrave Street. And I learnt a lot, but there was a time there where my wife gave me a punch on the shoulder and said, "Mike, you're a chef. You're not a baker. You need to earn a little bit more money. There's 5 of us in this family. Get on with it." So I went and knocked on my good friend Andrew Forst's door, this huge antique warehouse that he had in Surrey Hills. And I said, "Look, let's have a dinner party. You invite 20 people, I'll invite 20. And let's get on with it." So I went to the market that Friday, chose really great produce. I didn't know what I was going to order. I didn't write a menu. I decided to let the produce tell me what to cook. And then I came back on Saturday and did a bit of prep. And then Sunday, we hired a 3-ton truck, emptied out the back of his warehouse, left some tables there. I used my grandmother's silverware and begged, borrowed, stole plates. And we did this 5-course dinner party for friends using a little 3-ring burner that I hired from Pages, a plate warmer, and a little turbofan oven that I borrowed, and a wine match. And it was just a really incredible time because Andrew's friends, well, we didn't realise that his friends knew my friends and my friends knew his friends. So it was an incredible night, and that set the tone for the next 12 months, where we did these illegal pop-up called Mike's Table at the back of his place. Every second Sunday night, where you didn't know what you're eating. You had to book on Twitter. This is when Twitter was big. This is 2009, 2010. You had to be referred by a friend because it was illegal. We didn't have a liquor license. We didn't have a council approval, but we were booked out, months and months and months in advance for you to come and eat 5 courses. You didn't know what you were going to eat. We really didn't have much room for dietaries. And that was an incredible time. And during that time, we found this space in this huge building that was there making Rosella soup at the beginning of the 1900s. It was a Rosella soup factory. And then it got changed later on that year to Aristocrat gaming machines, of all things. Then it was empty for ages, and it was this huge space. It was 2,000 square meters inside with quite a lot of outdoor area that could be used. And I went in partnership with some furniture people that wanted the majority of the space, but they left me 600 square meters inside and some outdoor areas. So I looked at the space and I just thought, my God, this is huge. This is going to be a huge restaurant as I know it. What are you going to do here? What can you do? And I sat on the floor for weeks just thinking, shit, Mike, you've signed this agreement to do something here. Time's ticking. What are you going to do? And then it came to me that space was a factory. There would have been a canteen where people would have sat next to each other and had a cup of tea and chatted about the day. And it just dawned upon me, why don't you open a canteen where rich man can stand next to poor man and eat the same food? It doesn't matter. There's no pomp and ceremony. There's no waiter service. You're getting the same food, whatever you order. And it enabled me basically to have freedom of thought and freedom of produce and not worry too much about the gross overheads of huge labor bills and stuff. It was kitchen ran pretty much, with a couple of guys on the floor clearing tables and someone on the till, and it worked. It worked from day one. It meant that I could use small producers. I didn't have a menu. I'd go to the market a couple of times a week. I'd go there and buy what was in its prime. And obviously, when you buy food that's in season in its prime, it's at the best price. So we would get the food back to Kitchen by Mike in Rosebery. We'd write a menu around the booty that we'd found, and off we'd go. And you'd queue up with your tin plate. We'd put some lamb on there, or some pork, or some chicken, and then you choose a couple of salads with it. You pay at the till. You sit down, the cutlery was on the table, you eat and you go. It was a really fast sequence But it just meant that I could charge a good price for food, not an overprice for food, because it meant that they weren't paying for all the pomp and ceremony of a restaurant. So I just wanted to bring great food to everyone, and that was the chance that I could do that, and it worked. So that was Kitchen by Mike, and how that was found and seen in my eyes. One
of the signature dishes at Kitchen by Mike is your amazing pork belly. Tell us about that dish.
Oh, look, do you know, back in 2012, pork belly wasn't expensive. And there was quite a bit of it around because most people were using pork chops, or they were using, shoulders or legs in other guises. But belly wasn't quite on the money back then. So we were able to pick up some really great pork from different people. And it just made sense to us in the format that we were serving. We were able to cook whole bellies. So we'd obviously brine it for overnight. Then we'd confit it slowly overnight in the wood oven that we had there, because it was cooling down. It was cool enough to leave it in the door. We'd leave it in the door overnight, just confying in fat. And then the next day we'd lift it out and we'd press it in the cool room. And then it was ready to go. So it was a number of days process. But for me, it was worth it, because then all we had to do was, when the wood-fired oven was hot, sling in gastro trays of whole pork bellies. They'd come out super crispy, and then we just chop them all up and put them back on a chopping board, and we'd have 20 portions of pork belly up on the pass, and before you knew it, we'd have a new one going back up. And it just worked for the format. We could just run a knife down the middle and then cross it over the other way with cutting crispy slices of pork belly, and it just happened. And we loved it, and we'd often serve it with lots of different things that we'd find in the market. We'd make quince relish, we'd make different chutneys, we'd make piccalilli and all these other amazing little condiments that we'd find ingredients for, and just make wonderful things to serve with that pork. That's there's the pork belly story. Pretty amazing. I do love pork belly, but I must say, if you have a chance to cook it, it really makes the difference cooking it slow overnight in the confit. It really renders everything down, and then giving it that pressing also gives it a nice firm texture. So a couple of steps in there which I think are crucial for great pork belly.
Tell us about some of the connections that you've made with producers. Are there farmers and pork farmers out there that you've made connections with to enable you to do what you do?
Oh, sure. Yeah, look, there's always been plenty of people who we love dealing with. We were using Kurabuta a lot back in early 2012, 13 and 14. We found that a really great, stable product. It was good to use. It was consistent. But a farm who I really enjoyed using, and we were using them back at Rockpool back in the day, and it was a grant from Feather and Bone before he really formed Feather and Bone, was picking up pigs from Malanda Park, and that was kind of his shtick. He had these pigs that he was giving to Sean because he was waiting at Sean's at the time, and we'd also order some Malanda Park suckling pigs from him at the time. So I'd understood the quality of them, and then obviously being the creative director at Carriageworks Farmers Market, Malanda Park, they're a big part of the community at the market. They create incredible pork. They really do. And look, if you're in Sydney, definitely come to the markets on a Saturday. They're there every Saturday, and you can buy from those guys, and it's incredible. It's a really great product. So that Malanda Park, I guess, I've had a long time sort of relationship with those guys. It's been a pleasure.
You mentioned Rockpool and the incredible influence actually that you had there before this whole change that you had as well. What lured you originally to a career in hospitality?
Bloody hell, here we go. So when I was at school, I did pretty well in my HSC, and but what I decided, that my mother was a taskmaster, and she made my sister and I get a job while we were from year 10 onwards. My sister and I had to have a job because we had to pay board. My mother made us pay board, and I guess it was this thing. It wasn't a lot of money back then. It was $30 a week. A lot of money for a young kid, I guess. But the point of it was that don't take anything for granted. Things do cost. Things don't just happen. You've got to understand the value of this. And it taught me a lot of value. So during sort of latter times of studying, I was working at the Black Stump washing pots. That was my job. Dish pig, Black Stump. And they also had me sort of plating up some stuff there, and I understood what was happening in the kitchen, but I never thought I'd be a chef. But during that time at school also, I got both my parents worked, so I was cooking at home a bit because I got sick of eating late at night. After, so at 8:30 we were eating because both of them got home late from work, and it was the same. It was the same food that we were eating. It was great food, but I got bored of it, so I started cooking a little bit at home, and my mum was pretty intelligent. She bought some cookbooks for me to be inspired from, and I cooked some meals at home as well. So I enjoyed cooking, but it was never a career for me. I kind of wanted to do commerce. I was interested in business and numbers, but then I decided just before everything started that I didn't want to take my spot, that I'm not an academic, that I wanted to do something else. So I bummed around for about 3 weeks or so, and then I decided, I was reading the newspaper one morning, I saw on the employment page a photograph of a chef, and he was in his talk with his white chef's jacket and his neckerchief on. This is 1990, 89, 90. So, back in the day when Australia wanted to be like France, Michelin-starred restaurants and have these fancy-looking chefs, but we really were so far away that we didn't really understand what it meant. And I thought, wow, I could be a chef. So I got a job at a restaurant. I basically I wrote a letter to Chez Oz in Darlinghurst at the time, which was a really great restaurant. They said, come in for an interview. I got the job, and on my first day at Chez Oz, the head chef said, Mike, here's your recipe book. Here's the menu. You're on cold larder and pastry. Have it ready for lunch. And it's like, what do you mean? Who am I helping? You're not helping anyone. That's what you're doing. And for the first 2 weeks, I think on my way home, and I was living out at Glen Haven at that time with my parents, out near Dural, and I used to have to drive to Darlinghurst 6 days a week. I'd start at 8 in the morning, so I'd leave before 6 in the morning. This is pre-Harbour Tunnel, so the traffic was huge at that time. So I'd be working 6 doubles a week. I was doing 100-hour weeks, and I didn't think anything of it. I kind of started to get upset that I wasn't seeing my friends, and I was tired, and I didn't have a girlfriend anymore and stuff. But what I was enjoying was learning. But on the way home, in the first 2 weeks in the car, I guess I was in tears because I made so many mistakes. I didn't know what a souffle was. I had no idea what a genoise was or what bechamel sauce was. I had no idea. And here I was making these really incredible recipes and making every mistake under the sun. But after 2 weeks, I didn't make any more mistakes because I'd already made them all. And after that, I blitzed it, and I moved up in the kitchen. I went onto the grill, and I had a really incredible time at Chez Oz. But after 9 months, I'd had enough. I wanted to see friends. I wanted to enjoy my life. So I decided to walk to Rockpool in my break one day. I prepped really hard in the morning so I didn't have to do any prep in the arvo. And off I walked to the Rockpool from Darlinghurst, and I knocked on the door, and Neil answered, and I asked if he had a job, and he said, no, come in, let's have a chat. And he'd been open for maybe 6 to 9 months. It was early days for him, but I knew about it. I'd heard about Rockpool. I heard what he was doing, and it was something which I thought, wow, this could be exciting. And he said, well, where are you working, Mike? And I said, I work at Chez Oz, and he goes, oh, well, that's a great restaurant. How many shifts are you working there? What do you do? I said, I do 6 doubles a week. And he said, oh, great. When can you start? So I started there, and right from mid-1990 right through to sort of 95, 96, I worked through his kitchens and was executive sous chef there. And then we opened the Star Grill in the IMAX cinema, where he made me his head chef there, which was exciting. And then I knew at that moment that it was time that I had to learn other things. I didn't know everything. And here I was in this very senior role, but I was worried that I didn't have all the answers if people asked me questions. I wanted to know the answers. I wanted to earn those stripes, and I didn't think that after cooking for 5-6 years that I could be an executive chef. I didn't think that I was due the credit. So I handed my notice, and I travelled for 12 months through Europe, staging at some pretty amazing restaurants and just camping. I had a tent, and I had a suit, of all things. So I'd walk out of my tent in a suit and walk to a really incredible restaurant, because that's really all I was travelling for. I was travelling to learn the culture, the history, look at art galleries and look at beautiful churches and stuff, but also to eat great food. So how would I save money? Well, don't stay at a great hotel. Camp. Save money that way and use your money to eat. So that was the story at Rockville.
Well, Christmas is around the corner, and you're going to be in cooler climes for it. But Christmas hams are generally on the table. Is that something that you do?
Oh, every Christmas, whether I'm in Australia or the UK, we have ham. There's no question. So what we usually do is in Australia, we have a lighter sort of lunch. We'll have seafood and always have a ham on the table. But in the UK, they usually grow turkeys in the village. We'll have a turkey this year and a local ham that will probably come from one of the saddlebacks that my father-in-law used to grow on the farm. He pushed them out to other farmers, so there's quite a lot of saddlebacks in the village. So we'll have a leg of ham from one of the saddlebacks. And ham for us is on Christmas Day, but the actual ham meal that we really love is the Boxing Day meal. So it's a big procession to eat ham on the Boxing Day, and it's because Boxing Day is one of the days for us where you've woken up, you've done all the trudge of Christmas Day cooking and stuff. Now you just enjoy the day. You might read the new book that you've got, lucky you, the new book next to the fire and stuff. But what we do for lunch is we get the glazed ham, we warm it slightly in the oven, we serve it sliced, and we serve it with mashed potato, usually some braised cabbage, red cabbage, or some leaves from the garden if there are any, but with Cumberland sauce. And that is every Boxing Day lunch, whether I'm in Australia or whether I'm in England. It's ham and Cumberland sauce, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the highlight. I actually like Boxing Day lunch more so than Christmas Day sometimes, because it is that wonderful ham with that lovely piquant sauce of Cumberland and some warm mashed potato. It's hard to beat.
After the couple of years that we've all had, how's it feeling to be over there for Christmas this year? Well,
at the moment, I'm at my father-in-law's in Jersey, and it's starting to ramp up here. Christmas, there's Christmas decorations in the street, and you can tell people are starting to get in the celebrations. It's quite lax over here. That not a lot of people are wearing masks. Most people are over it, and they're just celebrating. They're having a fun time. I guess we're heading we'll go to London for a few days now on Sunday, and then we'll be in Wales by about the 18th. And that's when Christmas will really hit home for us. We'll go out into the woods. They've got a massive pine forest. And what we used to do is we used to cut a tree, but we've stopped cutting trees because we usually find incredible branches in the pine forest that we'll carry back to the house, and we'll decorate the branch with decorations. And it's a real incredible time, Christmas, in the English countryside. It's cold, it's bleak. You want to sit by the fire. You want to enjoy a beautiful glass of port. You're usually making mince pies from scratch. We love making mince pies. And I guess it becomes really, it's real when you're making incredible short crust pastry and you're using suet in the short crust pastry, because you have suet. You know, these farms, you have suet because your cattle produces suet. So you use suet in your cooking, and you use these old types of cooking methods, which honestly, the suet inside the short crust, it makes it slightly shorter. You get this incredible crumbly texture. And then you know, people have their own, you know, family recipes of making different mincemeat recipes and stuff, and it's really lovely. It's a tradition, and that's what I really love about coming back to Europe at Christmas time. There's that real tradition of centuries and centuries of eating food from farms and family tradition. It's a wonderful thing. It makes my heart sing, and really inspires me to cook.
You'll be opening Kitchen by Mike in the early part of 2022. How does it feel to get to that stage? Do
you know, it's been a really tough couple of years. I think we were lucky enough to make the change to doing the ready meals, which have helped us not only last year, but it helped us pivot again this year when Gladys closed us all. So we've been doing ready meals ever since. Until last week when we sent our last box out for a little while. We'll stop on those for a bit. We're doing Christmas events at the moment in the city. We've booked out. We're doing a couple of parties a day for private events for Christmas, and we're loving that. That's a real special thing, because the people that have made the bookings are our long-term customers that have always come to us and shown us support. So for us to be able to close the restaurant and only open for them and their friends and cook a really generous lunch, which is really caring, and we focus on giving them really delicious food to share, and nothing too heavy, nothing too light, a good wine list, and we just let them take the space. And it's a really lovely thing to do that, not to have the stress of opening in the city at the moment, because in the city where we are, there's very few people still. There's people in there right now in December because they're going to Christmas parties, but really, if you look 2 weeks ago, our building alone where we are, it was less than 7% occupancy, and people in the city, down our end in the CBD, in the business district, people really don't come back in the city until after Australia Day. Most people go on holidays after Christmas. They've got their kids are off school, so it's school holidays. So people don't come back into town too early. So we're going to sort of slowly open in the new year, but not in a big hurry. We've got to be careful. It's not easy at this time, really choosing the right time to open. And we're also doing an amazing thing. We're doing the Westpac Open Air Cinema again at Mrs. Macquarie's chair. So we man that. We totally do the catering for all areas in there. So we've got 3 different areas where you can eat at. We've got the point, which is an outside area that holds 600 people plus an extra 400 standing room, which we're doing a Mexican taqueria, where you can order really simple Mexican food and have a beer or a Hendrix cocktail down there. And then we're doing a lounge up the top, which is a sort of a Kitchen by Mike sit-down restaurant. And then we're doing the garden area where you can choose some of the Kitchen by Mike classics and eat off of, the traditional falconware plate, some roast chicken, some pumpkin and some cucumber salad. All of the classics will be on there. So there's 1,500 people a day that we see through there. They come in at 6. The movie starts just after 8. So it's a real honed experience where you're dealing with a lot of customers very quickly. But it's so exciting, and we love being part of it. And, Rob and the team at Cinerent who do the cinema really get some great films on. And I love our partnership that we formed there with different sponsors. And it's a really great opportunity for us to, I guess, leave our comfort zone and do something really exciting for Sydney. I think it's one of Sydney's great events where you can watch a movie on the harbour, look at the harbour bridge and the opera house behind it, and for us to be part of that is very important to me. So it's exciting.
Well, Mike, it's always an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. Have a wonderful Christmas over there, and we'll see you back over here in the new year.
I can't wait, and I'll see you very soon. And everyone out there, happy Christmas to you all, and make sure you glaze your ham and serve with Cumberland sauce. Lots of love, guys.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.